Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the City Skylines series. Today we are going to be expanding out our old town, and we're going to be creating a Cathedral Hill. In the last episode we made Castle Hill, which is going to be on the other side of the motorway to this area. I'm just quickly showing you some of the shots from the final result of this episode. As a kind of a sneak preview, what I did was I terraformed another hill to go on the opposite side of the castle we built in the last episode, and at the very top I added a cathedral and kind of a market square, which you saw earlier, and then this bit that I've just flown through, this is kind of the government building section, and then as we go further and further down the hill, the buildings become more residential than touristy or government or things like that. And what I'm showing on screen now is this really nice World War II monument asset that I found on the workshop that I really wanted to add in because I thought it belonged in kind of the old town area. So yeah, that's what today's episode is going to be. As you can see now, I'm just going over back to the Castle Hill so you can kind of get a view of the entire city as it is at the minute. Looking over the downtown area, the Castle Hill we built last episode, and then Cathedral Hill there in the background. So I'm going to kick off the time lapse and let's get started. So we're going to start at the top of the hill with the cathedral and the market square. The market square is, I think it's called the Winter Market on the asset store. Really nice asset with a big Christmas tree, and when you zoom in you get I think it's Jingle Bells that plays, which is a really nice little touch. I thought that was really fitting to plop in front of the cathedral, as you know, cathedrals are often set with a big square out in front of them that the locals will put markets on and spend a lot of time there, and I thought that would fit in really well with the aesthetic of the city. And yeah, I wanted the cathedral to be on the top of the hill because I had the idea that the history of this town is like inspired by Henry VIII a little bit, in that the monarchy ruled over the land and the cities for ages, and then kind of hand in hand with the church, but then them and the church had a big falling out, so the church basically moved onto the other side of the city. That's kind of why I've got Cathedral Hill and Castle Hill. And, there's always been a bit of tension between the two. One half of the populace believed in the king and the other half believed in the church. Kind of keeping in theme with that, I'm putting all the government buildings on the Church Hill side. Because to oppose the government, not to oppose the government, to oppose the monarchy, as it were. I thought that would play into the history quite well. And I have this idea that Cathedral Hill is going to be tiered. So the top tier will be the cathedral and the church, and the very, very higher upper classes, and then below the church you have the government. Obviously, in today's society, for most people, that isn't how the world would work. You wouldn't place the church above the government, but back then that's probably how you would have. The church had a huge influence, as did royals and kingdoms. So that's why we have I've actually made sure that Cathedral Hill is the exact same height as Castle Hill. So you have this idea that they were both of equal stature, but you had to choose one over the other. And in keeping with trying to explain the history of the city a little bit, I found this really cool World War II monument asset I mentioned earlier, and I kind of I was trying to plonk it the way you saw there, but I felt like it was too crowded. I felt like the monument you would kind of want off on its own a little bit. You would still want it in the heart of the city, but you wouldn't want it to be cluttered around. You wouldn't want it to be just in the middle of loads of residential buildings, because it would feel a little disrespectful. So I decided in the end to put that a little way out on its own, still right at the top of the hill, to signify its importance. but I decided to make like a kind of a buffer with a bit of grassland and some trees in the way, so that we could, so you know, it's kind of offset, very respectful, its own quiet little area, as you'll see in a little bit. And yeah, I wanted the cathedral to sit right on the edge of the cliff face. I have this really, I like all my big towering features to kind of lord over the land and, you know, be part of the skyline and be the big. So if you were to drive around the city, you know, you could look up at these hills and you would see the cathedral, you would see the castle, you would see the World War II monument, you'd see these great huge structures. I kind of took some inspiration from Lincoln Cathedral. Lincolnshire is extremely flat if you've ever been, but once you get to Lincoln, they have this very steep hill which is called Steep Hill because they couldn't think of a better name for it. And then right at the top there's this huge great cathedral that you can see for miles and miles and miles, and it's really something to behold, to look at. So that's kind of the feeling that I wanted to get from these structures. As you can see, talking about the World War II monument, I've put that off to one side. I'm kind of at the bottom of the governmental street. So yeah, those three buildings, they're facing us, they're all government buildings, like different health departments and education departments, things like that, and parliament. And then the other building is the big police headquarters and, you know, security and things like that. And I wanted to keep residential to a minimum on that street because I feel, you know, that's where the tourists are going to go. It's where all the key politicians are going to go. I think I put a church on there because I feel like they would, you know, I think it's normal for there to be a church next to all the government buildings. In London, there is Westminster Abbey next to Westminster. The politicians don't tend to go to like St. Paul's Cathedral. They have their own. They have an abbey, but I just gave the government of this city a little church. Well, not a little church. It's quite big actually. I think it's actually a bigger asset than the cathedral, which is at the top of the hill. But as it's lower in the hill, it implies it's got less significance. Yeah, that's me plonking it down there. Again, really nice asset though. I just kind of shuffled. Yeah, that building's called the Oppression Office. So that'll be the security services. And yeah, I kept, as you can see, I'm dezoning the residential around the World War II monument, just to keep it a bit separate, and I'm, you know, lining trees around the edge, to try and make it a little bit more private, a little bit more special that way, I think, as well. And I don't want too many cars driving up and down the road it's on, so I added in a little pathway so that people can get in and out. I have the idea that I am gonna put quite a lot of commercial into this area, but I'm gonna put all the commercial at the bottom of the hill. I only really want residents and tourists up at the top. So I'm gonna try and use pathways quite a fair bit, to keep the flow of traffic to an absolute minimum up at the top. And yeah, as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, I want these big dominating buildings on the edge of the cliffs, so I kind of brought the cliff in to hit the World War II monument a little bit. And then the final thing I'm going to make before I do a time jump, it's just a nice little square, kind of inspired by lots of the little squares in London that have a park in the middle and then big houses going all around. So what I'm going to do in a little minute is stop the video and I'm going to let the simulation run. I'm going to add in some more roads, let it run out a bit, populate the shops and all the buildings, and we'll take it from there. So here we are, we've let the city run out for a bit and we've populated all this residential area. I've left a gap on the hill on this side because I've got some plans for that in the future, but you can see we look a bit more fleshed out now. The cathedral square is actually looking really good. I've been using the Find It and the Ploppable Growables mod so that I can actually choose which assets get put here, and it's been an absolute lifesaver. It stopped me getting really horrible, well, not horrible assets, but they were way too big for what I wanted. A lot of them were actually taller than the cathedral itself, so they kind of dwarfed it, and I didn't really want that. So I've put down some of the shorter assets. I think, you know, it gives a really nice vibe. I really like the look of the sun over the cathedral there. It looks really nice. And yeah, and I've brought in all the cliff edges a little bit. Oh, that house looks a bit out of place. I might delete that and just D-zone whatever's there. There we go. Oh, another one's built up on it instantly. There we go. But yeah, it looks really good. Brought in the cliffs so that everything's right on the edge, which, you know, is dangerous, but I didn't like leaving the grassland. It made it look a bit empty. So I've kind of brought it in a bit. So these are all the upper classes at the top of the hill. And then we move down. This is the government street, which still stands out, especially because of this park in the way. You're still looking up at all the government buildings and the big church. Yeah, as I said, kept away all the residential from the monument over here. In fact, they probably shouldn't be there. Need to dezone that. Like that. Yeah, that's a bit better. You come down here and I plunked down loads of commercial down here, which is proving to be very, very popular. I'll show you in a minute. I'm getting a lot of traffic through to this area, and then yeah, I spread the houses right up to the edge so you can see them from the motorway. And yeah, as I mentioned, this bit is bare now, but I've got a really good idea for what I want to do in this section, but I think that'll be a video in itself, so I'll leave it for that. So yeah, looking pretty good. Looking over at the rival town, I had to create this junction, and I'll be honest, this is all a bit of a nightmare, if I'm honest. If I zoom in on this footpath, you can see just how much foot traffic I'm getting from between the two cities. Well, they're the same city, sorry, but between the two regions, between Castle Hill and Cathedral Hill, I'm getting absolutely loads. I actually had to disable them, civilians from crossing all the way down here because they were just blocking traffic just infinitely. It was ridiculous. So instead I built this big path, a big bridge that goes all the way over, and then that way they're not interfering with the traffic, and on this side it can dump them off on whichever side they choose. What I might quickly do actually is just increase the speed limit on this one-way road, because what I found is a lot of people were coming onto this junction and then just turning off here. So I might as well just have added in this to get them where they need to go. Because a lot of the guys are coming down here because there's a bus stop here. So I have a bus route and a tram stop as well. So the tram, you can see the buses coming down. The tram comes down and the tram goes up to the castle, all the way up here and back down. And then if we look at the buses, there's the thing. The buses are just looping from... They're dropping off the civilians here, who can then go to the tram line, and then they're just dropping the civilians off here and coming back around. They're not. I didn't want to make them go actually into the city because I thought that was going to cause too much congestion. I mean, look at this foot traffic; it's ridiculous because of all my high intensity commercial up here, and you know all the tourism at the top with my parks and. Yeah, all my market square and stuff. But I'm quite happy with how it turned out. I might have to do some traffic modifications. It tends to get heavy with people trying to turn onto the highway this way. So maybe some minor modifications between now and the next video. But I'll have a play around with that off camera. It's not particularly interesting viewing, so I shall play with that at a different time. Yeah, so I'm really quite happy with how it's turned out. not the tale of two cities, but you get the idea now. With Cathedral Hill here, Castle Hill here. Actually, what I do need to do is all stills. Has it all stills? Oh no, I zoned it out. Oh yeah, that's what I did. So I had Cathedral Hill up here, that district, and then I created, it's called Brown Water, which isn't a particularly nice name, but the idea is this is where the peasantry used to live with, you know, the water from the top of the hill draining down and becoming more and more polluted as it went down. Not a very nice name, I should maybe change that. It was a bit of a joke as I put it in, but I might as well. I'm going to stick with it for now. And then, yeah, as I say, maybe not next episode. Next episode, what I actually want to do is I want to go back to the downtown area, and I want to focus on getting a really good like skyline out. So I'm going to find some cool skyscraper assets on the store, start plonking them in, and then I've still got these areas to build out a bit. And now that we've kind of established like quite a few big areas, I'm probably going to be doing some more detailing work, because I really like going in depth on very specific assets and areas. So kind of like I did with a castle, where I've got this lovely asset, and then I made this, you know, this kids play park, some car parks, kind of made it look realistic. Like you could look at this and you can imagine this castle would actually exist in the real world, and it's kind of the same with this cathedral square, you know. You can imagine this being a real world, you know, like you can imagine this being part of some city somewhere. So that's what I want to get into a bit more, rather than just zoning and designing roads. I want to make my cities realistic and feel like they're alive. So I'll probably delve into that a bit more in the next episode or so. But yeah, I think I'll call it there for now. If you've managed to get to the end of this video, I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe. Every subscription really helps. Like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, leave some comments. Yeah, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.